When was the last time you felt true pleasure, either during intimacy or eating cake? Hello, everybody. I'm Erin, your favorite sex therapist, and today I am joined by Erica, my favorite psychotherapist specializing in sexual wellness. And we are so pumped to be here today because we are diving into all things women's pleasure, why it's not happening for some people, why it is for others, what makes it hard, how to make more of it, either on your
Ooh,
own or in relationships. And we are so pumped. So, Erica, welcome. I'm so excited to talk
hi.
about this. I could talk about women's pleasure all day long.
That's great. I, yeah, I think that it's a hard topic because, okay, well, I would say jumping right in, it's such an embodied feeling of like joy is something that is in your physical being. And as we are more disconnected from our bodies, I think that we lose that sense of like true enjoyment, like that ecstasy. I mean, I think that's even like a more extreme version of pleasure, but just like yes, that feeling of surrender, that feeling of, being totally engaged with a moment that is experienced as pleasure or satisfaction. And yeah, so I think it's not happening for people in like the mundane, and it's not happening in sex or intimacy.
I think that's such a helpful place to start because, especially when we think about women and our relationship with our bodies, let alone pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a complicated one, right? Like we take
Yeah.
in a lot of messages over the years about how we're supposed to look and how we're supposed to feel and what our bodies are supposed to do. And it always makes me think of, and I've probably talked to you about this before, but it always makes me think of the changing bodies talk that we had in
Mhm.
like fourth grade, like the one where they separated the boys and the girls, right? And talked to us about puberty, right? Do you remember that talk?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's burned into our brains probably. But this like idea of embodiment and our relationship with our bodies in general, it's making me think about that because I have this vivid memory of being on the playground afterwards and the boys were
Mm.
hooting and hollering and they were laughing about how funny their talk was. And let's be real, they talked about erections, which can be funny. So I was like, okay, I get it. But I remember being so confused because what did we learn about? Freaking pregnancy and periods. And I was like 10 years old. And I
Mm-hmm.
have this vivid memory because one of the first things that I learned about my body and it changing is that it's fucking scary, that it does scary
Yeah.
things for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of my life that was going to feel out of control every month and it was going to be terrible. That's how we talk about periods, right? They're terrible and they're
Oh
awful.
yeah.
Can't control them. So I feel like going way back, even that
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from my body. I was like, well, I don't want this to happen. This sounds terrible. And it was just like, well, get ready.
Mm-hmm.
Even that disconnects.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. The fear, it's just like it's not even exciting. They're talking about, I mean, that like the whole idea of talking about erections is that it is based around the experience of pleasure. It's based around the experience of like excitement or enjoyment and like, okay, this is going to happen inappropriately sometimes, right? Like, so they
Yes.
are, of course, giggling about it, but pleasure is not at all a part of our conversation. Yeah. So it's like, I think it's twofold that it's like not even part of the conversation. And the things that are part of the conversation are things that are actively pushing us away from pleasure and from embodiment and from even like a feeling of agency, right? Because we don't even feel like we have control over pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's a hard thing like a lot of our clients are coming to us with, right? Like they're talking about, I'm not interested in sex. I don't think about it on my own ever. And it takes a lot for me to get into it. And I think that part of that, yes, is like sexual responsiveness. And we talk about that as like the whole spectrum and everything. But your connection to pleasure is absolutely a factor in that.
Yes. And I think that's such a good point that like I hear that all the time from clients, right? They're like, I want to want sex more. I want it to be easier to get in the mood, right? Like what's wrong with me that's not showing up like it is for my husband, right? Like we've heard it all.
Hmm.
And I think it's so interesting because one of the first questions that I will ask my ladies is I'm like, well, are you enjoying it? And they'll say, well, no, it feels like a chore. And I'm like, well, here we go. Like, of course, first off, chores suck. Nobody wants to do chores. Like, nobody's super fired up to do that usually. But if it's not a fun experience for you, why would you want to do it? And then
Hmm.
you layer in the fact that it's stressful and it causes tension in your relationships and you're self-conscious about your body and how it looks and the sounds that it makes and like what it looks like in these positions, right? All of this shit. And now it's
The
not, we're
sounds.
not, that's right. the thinking about that embodiment now, like if that was me, now I'm not even in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Spectatoring, right? I'm thinking about what I should be doing, what I should be feeling. Am I going fast enough? Fast enough? Am I not doing enough? Am I making the right noises? Am I like sending the right cues? None of that's about me. And if I'm enjoying myself, it's about
Yes.
the show now.
Oh
So,
my
well,
God.
no wonder you don't want to do it because that doesn't sound fun at all.
No, no. Oh. So I think, okay, fun, right? I think that's a really good at like key factor, right? Because fun means is like an attitude, right? It's a perspective. Like you need to be coming at it from a place of openness and curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be influenceable. Like fun doesn't happen when you're like forcing an agenda, usually.
Yes. Exactly. It's the same with
So,
like laughter, right? Like if you were trying to force yourself to laugh,
yeah.
it's not going to happen
Yes.
because it needs to come naturally and authentically based
Hmm.
on the thing that is making you laugh in the first place. Same with fun.
Yeah.
Really good point. You can't force it to be fun.
Yeah. It's kind of like I don't the analogy that came to me is like tickling yourself.
Mm,
Like supposedly the whole thing about being tickled is like you're not in control of it. Like there's this unexpected element of being touched, right? And that's why it tickles. Like you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. So I think it's like the same thing in some ways with like fun, or maybe at least with fun, right? Like you need to be receptive to it if you're forcing some sort of experience, like you're trying to drive this, I don't know, you're seeking a particular outcome, right? And so you're not going to be tickled. You're not going to get the little thrill. I
yeah.
know tickling is a hard analogy because not everybody likes it, but yeah, I'm just thinking about like what state of mind you have to be in order to experience pleasure.
Yes. And I think you're making a really good point with this like receptivity to it and fun as the
Mm,
focus, because how many women have we talked to that go into it with a certain goal in mind? I mean, a lot of people
yeah.
go into sex because they're like, I want to orgasm, right? So, like, if we think about that kind of goal, that's a classic one. But for a lot of women who are struggling with this, the goal is like, I'm trying to keep the peace in my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to keep my partner happy because I can see how rejected and miserable he feels every time I say
Mm,
no, and I feel terrible about it, right? So it's like this band-aid solution that is not fun because the goal in that moment isn't fun. It's not play. It's not exploration. It's avoiding guilt, avoiding
mm-hmm.
anger, avoiding disappointment, right? And like those things are never going to lead to fun because the whole purpose of this environment now is tension filled.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a whole another conversation that we could go off on a tangent about, but I think there's
Mm-hmm.
something said about the play aspect. And for
Mm-hmm.
women in general, I think connecting with play, connecting with pleasure, even outside the bedroom, is really hard for a lot of us. Do you see that with your clients?
Oh my gosh. Yes, and with myself,
I was going to
just
say,
like,
or experience. I'm fully am relating to this conversation, but yeah,
yeah, because like, okay, I have two little kids. And so all the time they want to play
play.
or, they want to, there's like this spontaneity that comes with them, right? Which, let's take that out of the whole sex conversation. That's not part of the pleasure thing. But that sort of like mode switching
Mm.
really is what it is. In that they are like, oh, okay, we're doing this one activity and now we're ready for another activity. And now like, mom, I'm gonna like climb up your whole body and like, I want to tickle you. And so it's like so much sensation, but also having to be like, okay, I'm the adult and I have an agenda that I want to
Mm.
get through for the day.
Yep.
And no part of my agenda was 20 minutes of rolling on the floor and you know,
Yep.
playing trains and or whatever, like the play aspect. But I mean, of course, it should be part of my agenda to play with my kids, and it is in some ways, but it's not necessarily like the way that my brain is organizing the day. And so I think the same thing happens when at the end of the day or whenever you have a chance to connect with your partner and they're like, okay, like this is how I want to connect. And you're like, oh, I wanted to sit on the couch and watch a movie.
Hmm.
So it's that mode switching or being receptive to play or being receptive to, something different. Um, so yeah, I think that there's a lot in there, but then it's not just, you know, wanting to connect in that way. It's like, what will prevent you from experiencing pleasure? What will prevent you from doing
Yes, exactly. It's like the classic arousal is a two-step process, right? That sometimes we hyper focus on like, okay, I have low desire, so how do I have more sex? How do I have better sex? How do I have more orgasms? How do I get in the mood faster? Whatever it is, right? We focus on turning on the ons, but half of the
that?
equation is turning off the offs. And especially for women, when we carry a lot of the mental load, when we like live and die by our to-do list, which is fully me, that is my life and how I live my life. Like I love my to-do list. I love checking shit off them. It's my favorite thing. Is that we get stuck on the agenda, like you're talking about,
Hmm.
right? And it's making me think. One time I was talking to this client, and she shared this analogy that I think was so perfect for this. She was talking about it like having browser tabs open on the computer. She was like,
Hmm.
for me to get into sexual mode, it's like I have 76 browser tabs open and I have to close all of them out because there's work tabs and there's like home tabs and there's family tabs and there's children tabs and then there's my tabs and there's my husband tab, right? Like all of these tabs. And she's like, my husband has to close out like three. And that's not a judgment towards him, but it's this difference in how we view the world, how we organize our time, the different responsibilities that sometimes is the reality in relationships. And she was like, I have to close out so many tabs and he just doesn't get it. It's so easy for him to close out two or three, and I have to close out so many. I think that's where the whole chore
Mm.
play started to come from, right? Of like, help me with the chores so I can close some of these tabs so that I can be more open to this. Because I just have way too much shit going on in my brain right now to even code shift.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, but there's a lot there though too, because then it's not just it's like dynamics within the relationship, within your family system. It's entrained over functioning,
Yes.
you know, like as you were saying, like the mental load, but then also the relationship load. Like how many women come home and just like sit on the couch for 20 minutes before they start doing anything else? I don't know. Probably not as many men come home and relax before doing chores or responsibilities. I'm like laughing, like how many men are doing responsibilities after work? Anyway, probably many, probably many.
I know we are
Um,
stereotyping, but we're also speaking to a bigger issue that does happen in relationships with responsibilities.
yes, yes, yes. So I think that even creating that space, or I should say, like, I think that it's not so much that men are taking the space, it's that they feel allowed to take the space.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to encourage women not to say that you need to come home and sit on the couch, but if you need that 20 minutes to decompress after work before you can go into home life, do the same thing. You need 20 minutes to go from home routine to sexual connection with your partner. And I think that's hard when your partner is like, no, I'm ready for sex right now. And you're
Yes.
like, oh God, and the kids could wake up at any second. Like, I guess I should just do it. But, taking that 5 minutes to figure out whatever it is that's going to help you get into pleasure mode, that receptivity, even if it's like quick reset, quick little like mantra meditation, just looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, it's sex time. Like, whatever it
Let's do
is.
this.
That's right. Put on your war paint. Um, but like to get your brain into that mode, like we code switch all day,
All day.
and for some people it's harder than others, and like I totally appreciate that. But it is a necessity for life and for the functioning of your intimate partner relationship. Is like you're gonna have to figure out how to get in that headspace. And it's not for the benefit of your partner. Like we need to stop thinking that way. Like the pleasure is for you. Like whose responsibility is it for you to feel pleasure?
Yes. And I think that's a really important piece of this conversation because, and you're like, I'm resonating with so many things that you're talking about because I talk a lot about having sex for your partner versus with them. because people
Mm-hmm.
get stuck having sex for their partner and like not with them. And now like it's not even about you and you're not even like
Yes.
factoring yourself into this equation. But like this transition ritual, or like what you're talking about, I talk about it like a transition ritual, all right? Like the code
Mm-hmm.
switching and
Mm-hmm.
giving yourself time, because it's not the flip of a switch. Like you need some time. Like women's bodies are built differently. Like we need all sorts of time for our bodies to shift and things to start to lubricate and things to start to expand, right? Like we know that we need that 20 to 30-minute window for sex specifically, but then we need that
Mm.
transition time to allow ourselves that space. And I think this onus, right, of it being on us to take up space, to care for ourselves, to remember that
Yes.
we cannot help anyone or be any good to other people if we are not caring for ourselves is a really tough one and is really important. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a delicate, when I have these conversations with my clients, it's delicate. You know, I recognize that there are a lot of factors involved, but if you're miserable and you're exhausted and you're hangry because you haven't eaten all day and you haven't showered in 3 days because everybody's needed everything from you and you have just worked a 12-hour shift checking your and you're still checking your emails when you're at home, are are you any good to anybody else in that? Of course you don't want to have sex. Like you are miserable yourself. And that is not doing
Mm.
anybody else any favors if you are running yourself into the ground. And the unfortunate
Mm-hmm.
reality is that nobody is going to do that for you. Like you have to be the one to say, I want to live my life in a meaningful way, right? Like I want to thrive and not just survive. Like this system isn't working for me and it needs to be different, but only you can do that for you. And I think that's a really tough thing for women because they think, well, if I'm not doing it, who's going to do it? And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that you will figure it out and like you can make shifts. But I think that that idea of asserting that you want to feel better in your life, especially for pleasure, let alone just like general health sometimes, is really hard for women. But
Mm-hmm.
nobody's coming to rescue us. Like we have to step in for ourselves.
Yes.
And that's a big part of empowerment and embodiment, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about energy, and as I do. And as you're saying, like, no one can decide this for you. You decide where your energy goes. And if you've decided that this is an energy drain, then of course it is. But if you decide that this is something that's going to give you energy, like, okay, I believe that actually in the whole, is it the a Buddhist idea, the yab yum, like the whole energy exchange is that women actually gain energy from the sexual interaction. That because of the whole giving of semen, men are supposed to be drained of energy and that women receive it, right? There is a give and a take, and I think it goes both ways. Absolutely. I guarantee you that men are receiving energy as well. But if you think about the physical response, that for women who are like really enjoying sex and experiencing pleasure from it, a lot of them get like juiced up from it. And I don't mean that in like a in a wet way. Like like they are like invigorated for the day. They're good to go. And what happens to most men after they have sex? They pass out. So I think that it's funny when you think about it in that way that like they need to recover and like their energy system kind of like goes dormant and then uses the energy to give them a boost later on. But women, it's like an immediate like energy drink for a lot of them.
That is so interesting. Well, and it's making me think about the benefits to sex. Because usually in the work that I'm doing, we're talking about like why it sucks and it feels like a chore and it's draining the energy, right? Because it is your once your brain starts to associate sex with something stressful, it triggers
Hmm.
your fight or flight
Hmm.
response. So there's like a rewiring of the brain that we have to do around that. But it's
Hmm.
making me think about all the benefits to sex that sometimes people don't think about. It's like, yeah, I don't want it to feel so stressful anymore. And it's like, first off, us women, we need to dream bigger, right? Like I want sex again. Okay, let's dream bigger. Let's like enjoy sex. Let's have a good time. Let's like have
Yes.
orgasms as much as our male partners, right? Like let's dream a little bit bigger because I think we can do that. But
Yeah.
it's making me think about all of the benefits, right? That like for women
Hmm.
especially, like having orgasms is a natural pain reliever. Releases
Uh-huh.
endocannabinoids, right? Like it literally diminishes our pain and can help with periods and cramps and back pain and all the shit that we deal with, right? And it releases
Labor. Hmm.
labor, yeah, and
Hmm.
oxytocin, which is like the cuddle chemical that literally helps us feel closer to our
Yes.
partners and more aligned,
Uh-huh.
right? And dopamine, which feels good, so we want to do it again, right? Like there are so many benefits to this that I think get missed because at the start, we have a hard time even allowing ourselves to step into this space where we say, I do want more. I do want this to be different. And I think
Hmm.
especially because I work with a lot of couples in long-term relationships, that is especially a tough spot to start because a lot of times they've been faking it. A lot of times there are these entrenched patterns where we're going to have a tough conversation about the fact that I need something different. And
Hmm.
this actually hasn't been super great. And there's going to be hurt feelings, right? There's strategies around
Yeah.
that. But to even step into that in the first place, we have to stop accepting that this is just how things are, quote unquote, for women. That like women are just going to deal with low desire, that they're just not going to have orgasms as often, that orgasm is going to be hard, right? Like none of this shit is true.
Hmm.
False
Hmm.
expectations, right? The expectations that we have about sex that are not based in reality.
Hmm.
And the reality is that it's actually a lot easier to shift this stuff than we realize, but we have to step into that in the first place, right? Like my
Hmm.
partner is never going to just be like, well, Aaron, like I'm going to make you have more orgasms and make like, no, like that'd be great. That's not going to happen, right? Like I can't just wait around for him to do this for me because I'm going to die first, because that's just not how this works, right? So we have to be willing to step into this space and say,
Yes.
I want to enjoy this like you do. I want this to be something that brings us together. I want this to be a stress reliever instead of a stressor, and assert that because damn, when women step into their power with that, like it makes sex better for everybody,
Oh my God, yeah.
your partners included.
Yes. Yes. You're right. So if you own that, you take that responsibility of like my pleasure is my responsibility, and I'm going to find a like this is going to give be something that gives me energy.
Mm,
I am going to own this as an energy boost. I think that can totally shift everything because it's sort of like, it's something attitude is like sports psychology. It's like whenever you decide that you're going to fail at something, then you fail, you know.
hmm
And so it's part of that whole like manifestation cycle. Um, But I think that even more so, we're talking not just about allowing ourselves pleasure in the intimacy sphere, but allowing ourselves pleasure and space outside of that. And that's
hmm
why, because if you don't allow yourself enjoyment and, space expansion in your mundane life, then you're not really going to allow it in your intimate life most of the time. So, this goes back to like the whole like enjoy the cake. When was the last time that you like really savored something that you were like, oh my God, yes, and it wasn't associated with feelings of guilt or, self-punishment or something like that. And I think it's not just like around food, but it's around like things that we enjoy. And part of this whole hustle culture is like you're not allowed to relax. So you're like, oh, I just really loved flipping through magazines, or I liked going through like my mom's catalogs and circling all of the things that I wanted to buy and never would. But like those types of things that now seem like really silly, or I can't justify taking that time, like those are the little moments that infuse pleasure and joy back into your life. And like, why aren't you allowed to do that?
And I think this impact of the brain is such an important one, right? Because it's like whatever you look for, you're going to see, and your brain is your largest sex organ. But I think you're onto something so important here, which is that general pleasure and sexual pleasure operate on the same circuits.
Mm,
How many times have all of us just like ate lunch at our desk and like scarfed it down and didn't even taste it because we're in the middle of all these things, right? And like
yeah.
just rushed to get from point A to point B in our car and like speeding and didn't like hear what was on the radio or roll the windows down, right? Or like ran through the rain because we didn't want to get wet when we used to love fucking playing in the rain when we were little, right? Like coming back to this play, like if you can't
Yeah.
slow down and connect with your senses at the basis, right?
Hmm.
Enjoying
Hmm.
that cake, feeling the sun on your skin, enjoying the breeze when you're like having the windows down in your car, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
connecting to your body in a physical way, of course, sexual pleasure is going to be hard. It's like trying to run before we can walk type thing, right? Like if we are
Yeah.
so disconnected from the body that we don't even know what she's telling us and we don't know what she's needing, and we're not giving her what she needs, right? If we think about the foundation with like quality sleep and
Hmm.
a diet that nourishes you and exercise that makes you feel good. Like if we're skipping that, we're trying to sprint and we're like toddlers. We can barely like get up and toddle around, right? And so I think you're right. Like the coming back to the basics with like play
Mm.
Pleasure for pleasure's sake in the little ways. I think a time, I'm going on many tangents, I'm ranting about this now, but I think time is a big factor of this, right? The women say, well, I don't have
Yeah.
time and I'm too exhausted. And it's like, you don't even have to start with doing anything different. You can start with bringing
Mhm.
different awareness to what you're already doing and allowing yourself to
Yes.
be there,
Yes.
right?
Oh, that's so important. Yeah. Hmm.
How many times do you like wash your hands during the day and you're just
Hmm.
like, gotta go and get out of the bathroom instead of like feeling the soap and noticing that the
Hmm.
water is from that might be a stupid example, right? But that is
No,
something
that's
you can
great.
pause in and
Hmm.
just feel instead of treating it like it's the checklist. It's just something I have to do to move on with my day because then we're never actually here.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. And I think that's such a good point. Like not just in it's ultimate presence in a way, right? And I think that's why it can be really hard. Um, that I mean it meaning sex. Like sex is such a presence activity that your body is moving around. It is moving around with somebody else's body, like dancing, like who can dance a tango? I mean, say, pretend you've been trained in how to do the the tango moves. Can you like just like mindlessly do them, or are you really gonna have to like pay attention to what your partner is doing and engage with their body and respond to it and all of these things? And it's very responsive, it's very present. And so if you don't devote time to building up that muscle in your brain of like responding to somebody else's body, you're going to be really awkward and it's going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to fumble a few steps because you're not in that habit, right? And so imagining this more, sorry, something just fell. Like you're in the middle of a very presence activity where you're involved with another person. You have to get accustomed to responding to somebody else's cues, being there with them, noticing how it feels in your body. And if you're so used to disconnecting from your body, then it's gonna be weird.
Mhm. And I think that's a skill, right? That like
Oh
when we live
yeah.
and die by the to-do list, we're used to always thinking about what do I need to do tomorrow? What did I forget to do yesterday? Right? Like takes us out of the
Hmm.
present moment. And at the end of the day, we're talking about mindfulness. And I know people have mixed feelings
Yeah.
around the word mindfulness, but they've done a lot of research on
Hmm.
how mindfulness leads to better sex for women because at the end of the day, it's just being in the here and now and experiencing things.
Present. Hmm.
Present, right? And what I'm
Yes.
thinking about in this, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, is that something that like I have struggled with and a lot of my clients struggle with when navigating this area is they'll say like, okay, I want things to be better, right? Like, yeah, I want this to be easier. I want to get in the mood faster, whatever it is. But then actually taking the action to do that or to start
Mm.
implementing different strategies or skills or communication tactics with their partner is really difficult because in that transition, part of what we have to do as women is recognize how we have been contributing to this. And I think that's a really tough thing to look in the mirror to say, damn, I have been faking it because that felt easier. I have been self-abandoning because I've been putting my partner's needs before myself. I haven't been showing up in a way that feels meaningful and intentional. So now I'm going to have to backtrack and do all of this other work because it's actually made it a lot harder for me. And that I think is a very tough initial realization. I think it's why a lot of women struggle for so long
Hmm.
ask
Hmm.
for help before they work with us because it's scary to confront. And it comes
Hmm.
back to this onus, right? Of like, well, nobody's going to do it for you. But there's a lot of grief, I think, in recognizing that you're like, damn, I have been contributing to this, and that does not feel good.
Yes. And understandably, because I'm thinking about I think that in a lot of ways it doesn't feel empowering. It feels like, oh, I'm doing this for the other person, and that feels like I'm at a disadvantage. But in other ways, you are controlling the situation. And it's a way for you to maintain power by withdrawing your energy,
Mm,
And so it's a self-protective measure. And you kind of like abandoning your body and, just like imagining grocery shopping later while your body is doing this thing. Like you're not present. You're not. giving your energy authentically, meaning like genuinely deeply to your partner. And that is like a self-protective thing, but it's also a way to maintain control because being in that position is intensely vulnerable. And I heard a great definition for vulnerability recently that it's more about opening yourself up to judgment.
Mm. Hmm.
So if you are feeling like somebody can judge me if they see me in this place, they're going to judge the way that my face looks, the sounds that I make, the sounds that, the sounds that my body makes,
Hmm.
um, the smells, like all of these things, like it's a scary thing, feeling like these things could get used against you later. I would hope that for most people in healthy relationships that that wouldn't be a realistic thing. But it's a very deep fear that we have in being exposed in that way. And so I think that it's natural that we want to avoid that exposure. We want to avoid that vulnerability. And the easiest way to do that is to kind of cop out of the moment.
Mm. Yeah.
And then we tell ourselves a whole story about, well, I don't actually enjoy it. It's not for me. It's uncomfortable. And that's where we start to recognize, like, how are we contributing to the situation?
Yes, exactly. And it's making me think about how the reality is that there is pain to staying the same, there is pain to changing
Mm,
anything in our lives, right? Like
hmm
there's
hmm
something that is causing us some discomfort. We can choose to stay where we're at and choose to deal with that discomfort, or we can choose to try to make a change. And there's discomfort in that because change is inherently a difficult process because it's the unknown, because it makes us feel vulnerable, right? And like we're not sure if people are going to judge us with what we're doing, if we're going to
Yeah.
judge ourselves if it doesn't work out. And I talk about this with my clients all the time, is choosing your struggle.
Yes.
Because it puts you back in control at the same time. Because I think with a lot of women who are dealing with this, they feel like, well, my body's just betraying me and I don't know what's going on and it's
Mm,
just happened and it feels very out of control, right?
yeah.
And yes, you can choose to continue having sex for your partner and going through the motions and faking it and doing it to check it off your list for a while, right? And deal with that struggle. Or you can choose, which gets worse over time usually because the resentment builds, but that is a struggle that you can choose, right? If you want to see how this happens or how this affects you long term and what
hmm
that feels like and deal with the increasing tension and conflict, you can choose that for sure. Or you can
hmm
choose the struggle of changing, which is also hard because it requires you to look in the mirror and try different tactics and have different conversations. But the driver, I think, for both of those is very different.
Yes.
Like choosing to struggle for fear of failing is one motivator versus choosing to struggle because you hope and believe that things can be different and you want to connect more deeply in your relationship. Different driver, right? But
Yes.
at the end of the day, I think it's important to recognize that we're always choosing where we're at for a
Mm,
reason.
hmm
But it's important to recognize that because it puts us back in control to say, okay, but if this really isn't where I want to be, I can choose to show up differently.
hmm 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 Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I think that, sorry, I was having a whole like flight of ideas. Um,
I just went real deep with the choosing to struggle. You choose your
no,
struggle, very deep concept, but
you do. And it's so hard to face that. And okay, but I also think that I'm gonna like back it up a little bit in some ways that it's really I think that for a lot of us we're thinking about this when we're kind of like in the prime of our lives and like sexual functioning is sort of like at its peak in some ways. And then we're like, oh well, how do I make this work? You're already in kind of like a place of privilege for a lot of us. Of like this is the best time in your life for like bodily functioning. But our bodies are going to start aging. And as they age, things are going to change. And I mean, not even, I should just say, like over life, your sexuality, your sexual expression, your sexual functioning changes. How you have sex as a teenager is totally different than how you'll have sex when you're in your 80s. And that's about like ability, mobility, hormones.
Awareness of what you
lubrication.
like. God, I hope I don't continue having sex like I did as I was as a teenager, you know?
Yes, that is so true. So, right. And I think that we really base our expectations off of the, sexual performance as a teenager. And we've talked about that before. Um, but the idea of pleasure even is sort of like something that we're like, well, that's for young people. Like that's for
Mhm.
like horny teenagers.
Yes.
But the idea of pleasure is lifelong. And if you center your whole sexual interaction or even like your relationship around experiencing pleasure together as a mutual experience, like, oh my gosh, how your relationship will transform. And it opens it up to that adaptability because look, there's going to be points when like erectile dysfunction happens or even like incontinence for some people and or meaning not even just like maintaining an erection or sustaining an erection, but like also delayed ejaculation and that sort of thing. And understanding that for some people, that's going to be something that you just navigate as a partnership and having it be open and part of the conversation allows pleasure to still happen without shame. And your relationship will be so much like better functioning if that isn't like a hidden thing that we just never talk about. That
Yes.
now, oh my God, sex lasts so much longer because he just can't come. And it's like, well, okay, if pleasure is the point of the conversation, maybe be like, okay, so I can't come as quickly as I used to. I don't actually need to orgasm or I don't need to ejaculate. I'm actually just really enjoying like being with you and making you orgasm and it's like so it kind of shifts the conversation when you're both focusing on pleasure and you're actually like both talking about it,
I know,
you
talk
know?
about it. What a novel concept because nobody's a mind
Yes.
reader, right? But that is
Yes.
this expectation that like people should just give us orgasms and they should know what we want, even though everybody is different. But well, and I think and this is such a good place to pause for today because I really could talk about this stuff all day long. But this idea of pleasure without shame. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's such an important piece because even as we're talking about through the lifespan, right? That I think a lot of women think that desire just drops off as we get older, right? And like our body does go through changes with perimenopause and menopause and that kind of stuff. And but research has shown that some of the couples who are having the best sex lives out here are older couples.
Mm-hmm.
I think for women, well, there's a lot of reasons why, but I think for women, part of that is because we stop caring about the bullshit. Right? The things that mattered to us when we were in our 20s don't matter to us in the same way when we're in our 60s. And we learn to let go of some of that shame and that judgment. And we're like, well, I'm just glad that things are working. And like, I just really love this person and I just want to connect. And I don't have like as much time to deal with shit that doesn't matter anymore. So I think
Mm-hmm.
this like
Mm-hmm.
pleasure as a lifelong journey is a really important one because, and like Emily
Yeah.
Nagoski, the author of Come As You Are, and her new book, Come Together, which is about longevity of pleasure and sexual connection in relationships. She says pleasure is the measure. Nothing
Oh.
else matters. It doesn't matter how often you're doing it, how long it lasts, what positions you're having it in, like what that sex looks like. If you're not having fun, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasure is the best measure of is this worth our time and effort? Because there's
Yes.
enough stress and bullshit and nonsense in our day-to-day world, right? Like our sex lives and the intimacy between the people that we love and are closest to shouldn't be more of that, right? It should be an outlet. So pleasure is the measure. That's your like goalpost, right? If it's not fun, then like that's what you need to focus on, the play and just reconnecting with your body and her sensations and her experiences because we don't want to do shit that stresses us out. So maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you don't really have low desire. Maybe your sex life just needs some shifting. You need some more pleasure in that.
Yes. Yes. And I think I like to bring it back to the life perspective of looking back on your life. Do you want to think of it as pleasure filled, as something that, was enjoyable and that your
Mhm.
spousal relationship was pleasure focused and fun and connective and that you like the foods that you ate were pleasureful and connective and just like thinking about the context of your life and how you want to live and enjoy the world. I think is it's all about a perspective and it's all about really owning that and embodying it, meaning like living that out
Mhm.
because I think that nobody wants to look back on their life and be like, oh, I approached it with such obligation and stress.
Exactly. exactly. Like, I don't want to look back on my deathbed and be like, man, I really wish that I had cared more about the cake that I was eating. And like, no, I don't, I want to be like, I ate really fucking good cake my whole life. And I had
Yes.
lots of orgasms, right? And I like
Yes.
spent lots of time out in the sun. And like, that's what I
Yes.
want to look back on, you know?
Exactly.
Not, I wish I had worked harder and stressed out more. Like, that's not what life is about. And I think we get stuck with that sometimes. But like, life is for living, it's not for doing.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's not about the doing, it's the experiencing.
Hmm. Exactly. It's the being. But
Yeah.
this was so fun. I'm so glad that you can. Like I said, I think we could make a 20-part series on women's pleasure. So we'll probably do another one at some point. But if any of this is resonating as you're listening, as you're watching this back, and you want more strategies because you're like, man, I want to start being and experiencing, not just living, and I want more strategies to actually take my like to invest in a different kind of struggle, right? To make this feel
Yeah.
different, to make it feel better in my relationship, hit us up. We are your resource. So our contact information is here for you. Or just share this with somebody that you're like, you know what? I think Jess needs to hear this. So I'm going to send it to her because, like Erica was saying, we need to talk about this stuff. The more we talk about it, the less scary it is, the easier it gets. So if you want to talk more, if you need more strategies and skills, hit us up and we will see you next time. But Erica, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye.